Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to talk about an exciting topic that most people love not to talk about, and that is the topic of death. Mitra and I believe that this is a really significant topic, and that becoming aware of our fear of death is actually key to living a more peaceful, joyful, and loving life. So, Mitra, to start off, why do you believe that becoming aware of this fear that we have is so important?
Because I believe anything that is hidden and it's powerful in the background is really informing how we are leading our lives. So it's just like anything else. If you have an ending in mind, which we call this an ending, in my view, it isn't, but let's say it is, then that informs the beginning and the middle of how we're doing what we're doing. It's just from my experience. I don't have any statistics or science to show, but I can tell you from experience of actually teaching on death for almost 40 years. I know that there is this sense, this fear of death that is hanging in the background all the time, unless we have really shed some light on it. In fact, in my view, a lot of times when people don't want to end things that are like should be ended, be it relationship, be it their job, be it even a meeting. You know, we had a great time, we had a great dinner, it's time to go. But we have a hesitation, almost like aversion to ending things that may be informed by the fact that we see an ending as death of something, an experience or anything else. So I think it's very important just from my personal and professional experience. Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you see death, the fear of death unconsciously showing up? I
Mm.
can tell you that for me, one of the examples was um, the striving for achievement. When I reflect in retrospect, I realized that my fear of death actually played a big part in that because I was
Oh.
fearful that I would die without achieving enough. Right? And it has its positives, but the downside was my own inner peace and my joy and my love. So while I was achieving a lot and I did succeed achieving a lot, my inner state was miserable.
Mm.
So what are some of the other ways that you have seen people this fear of unconscious fear of death is showing up?
Yeah, and I was just thinking, somebody may be listening and saying, I'm very young. I'm not like you. You're older. This does not pertain to me. Or somebody, it's interesting that young people think it doesn't really relate to them. And older people saying it's too close to my experience. I don't want to talk about it. So as a result, we don't talk about it. But it's really when we don't see ourselves as eternal, there is a sense of rush. Exactly what you said. It's like, I gotta get things done. And that sense, I mean, now I hear very young people saying, like, it's getting too late. And like they're in their 20s. And I laugh. They say, what's so funny? I said, like, do you know how old I am? I mean, I'm just getting excited about new projects. I'm writing this book and then I want to write that book and then I want to go this place and I want to try that system. And when I hear it, like decades younger people saying it's too late for me, just tells me that there is a sense of fear of an ending, which to me, first of all, is illusionary because, as you know, energy never dies. This body may die, but that energy that animates my body, what we call life, chi, John, like in different languages, there are different words for it, but that energy never dies. So when I see this rush that young and older people have, I feel like, oh, there must be this fear that is hanging. And the other thing is a very practical one. People don't wish to talk about it. I mean, we literally in Farsi, we have a saying, God forbid if someone dies. So we name them. Like when I say, when I die, they say, oh, God forbid. And I'm thinking, I mean, if you believe in God, I think God was the creator of death. What do you mean God forbid? God didn't forbid. That's why we have death. But it's just that hesitation that we have about even mentioning death or believing that there's like, if I said I was in a funeral or my friend is dying or somebody died, they say, okay, let's talk about good things. So from just norms in the culture, the words in the language, and the behavior and interactions of people that I see probably closer than like a average person, because usually people won't disclose these things at dinner table, the things that I hear in private sessions or classes. All of that tells me that there is this very deep seated relationship with fear. And I want to say something else. Just think about what is the trademark for death. Just think about that. All the frightening things. It's a skeleton, it's darkness, it's like, ooh, it's like, like I always think death has a really bad PR agency. Really bad PR. I would just change it. Like there is nothing. Whereas I know in many isms, death actually is an angel. They're
Mm.
considered death. They call it the death angel, but you don't see that in the way we portray it. So all of these things, I know it was a long answer, but it was a really deep question. What about you? I want to hear what you think because you're much younger than me.
Yeah, I was reflecting leading up to this episode on my relationship to death. And there
Hmm.
was a time in my life when my fear of death was pretty strong. Every time I thought about it, I just feel a really deep anxiety. And I'd also feel fear about the death of people I love as well, like
Hmm.
my parents and siblings, but particularly my parents because they were older. When I reflect now, because I've done, so much work on myself since then, I realized that back then, one of the things that I feared most about death was facing all the guilt that I was holding and the shame that I was holding. It was two things. One was some part of me feeling like I would have to face this shame at the time of death. But the other thing was this feeling that this shame that I was experiencing, which was telling me I'm not enough, I'll never be enough, I'm not worth anything, that I will have lived a full life with that feeling and I will have died feeling like my life was insignificant because of
Hmm.
that shame that I carried with me. So, a big, big driver I'd noticed of my fear of death was the shame that I was experiencing.
Hmm.
And the shame about what I can't, you know, pinpoint exactly what it was. It was a culmination of experiences that I had in my life in the younger years that led me to believe that, I'm not lovable, that I'm insignificant. And that's a really crappy feeling. For me, it was an inner hell. And it was one that I was suppressing and trying to hide. I was split within me. There was
Hmm.
this part of me that I wouldn't dare face, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, particularly on the shame episode we did, um, where I just wouldn't dare to want to face that side of me. But then I had to have the persona that I was presenting to the rest of the world that would hide that. I would try and offset that, but I was, disconnected from my true self.
So how, bring
And
me back to how that this
so
relates to death.
so I was afraid that, the idea of death, to die and thinking that I would live my life being split like this, not connected to my true self, feeling unworthy, that I would die with those feelings was a terrible feeling. I was terrified of that,
Hmm.
of living in an incomplete and unfulfilled life. As I did my shame work, as I shine the light on these dark spots in my psyche, and I walk towards these fears and I question these ideas and these beliefs that I had about myself, which was a journey. I mean, it's a multi-year journey for me.
Hmm.
But as I did, and as that dissolved, my fear of death, I notice now in retrospect, was dissolving along with it. So
Hmm.
there was definitely, for me personally, there was a correlation between the guilt and the shame I was experiencing and my fear of death.
Hmm. Okay. That's fascinating. So I wonder how many people can relate to that. That it's like because we feel it's an ending and we haven't done what we're supposed to do, it feels really incomplete and we're embarrassed about it. It's like I didn't do my homework and I left, or I didn't do my job and I left. And then that brings whatever it is that it brings. That's very interesting. I've been in the room when people leave their body. For some reason, I get a lot of invitation for that, and I do that as a volunteer work. I don't advertise it. Please don't call. But if people ask, if people who know me, if they ask, I do show up because I think it's an honor to witness the transitioning of the energy from physical body to non-physical. And it's very interesting what happens in the room. First of all, many people are petrified to be in the room. If I tell you how many loved ones left the room and I was alone with the person
Mm,
who was transitioning and they just couldn't bear to be in the room. And I was
mm,
just holding the hand of the person, which says a lot, by the way, about exactly what you asked about the belief, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Can I be in the room? They reported it as frightening, and I feel it and experience it as an honor. It's an
mm,
honor to witness that. And when I witness that and when I'm there in that moment, first of all, it's as close as it comes to being high. Not that I know what that is, but like, as I get reported, you really get um, to a different level of consciousness when you're in the room. But what I wanted to talk about was that I actually see the exactly opposite. So it's fascinating what we believe it's going to be like,
mm,
illusionary ideas,
mhm,
and what at least I have seen. And of course, my experience is limited, but it's very consistent that I feel a sense of relief. The best example that I can give is like you've come to the airport and I'm going to somewhere that I really love to go to. Like I'm going to, I don't know, somewhere that I really enjoy. And how do I, you say, "Oh, Mitra, I'm going to miss you." And I say, "Oh, no, 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 don't worry. I'm going to have fun." Like that sense I get on their face. Of course, it's
mm.
my interpretation, but I see that sense of slightest smile and a sense of like lightness. Again, I want to say this is purely my experience. I've never been there when a very sudden or harsh deaths happen because they don't get a chance to call me. These are people who either are leaving because they know it's happening or they is intentional. They need to be unplugged or things like that. But it's opposite of what many people imagine it would be. As I said, like, the death comes and it's following you and it's petrifying. It goes, ooh, and you got to like, ugh. It's actually, to me, as a third person, between the angel of death and the person leaving and me witnessing it, I experience a beautiful energetic exchange and a sense of peacefulness and relief.
It's interesting because I think you go into those experiences without an attachment to
Hmm.
that person being alive. And because you don't have an attachment or an expectation of of them being alive or an expectation about or perception of death being bad or good, you are able to experience it for what it is.
Hmm. Yeah.
And what it is what you're describing in your experience at least. And it resonates with me personally as well. I
Hmm.
haven't been in the room when someone has passed once when I was a child, but I was too young to really
Hmm.
understand. And I think there's this understanding that there is a life beyond the one we live in this physical world, and it is quite different from what we experience in this world,
Hmm.
which is a world of contrasts where there's a lot of good, but also a lot of quote unquote bad. and darkness. As I share this, I notice how, as my understanding that this world is not total reality, that I have a soul that lives beyond this physical body, and that actually this soul, as I've done my inner work, as I've kind of cleared the baggage and let the dust settle, that my soul is there's a lot of beauty in it, and there's love there, and there's peace there. That gives me much more comfort in the idea of what comes after or beyond this physical body, I should say.
Mhm.
Have
Yes.
you, Mitra, have you ever done any practices of contemplating death, or like
Yes.
any meditations or any specific inquiries that you
Mm.
have? Can you share about that? What have you done
I-
to acquaint yourself with death,
Well, actually,
or
first of all, personal.
your personal or your students, like
Your
either
students.
or?
Okay. So let me tell you the students first, and then I talk about the personal. With the students, actually, there's a course that I teach, the 3-month course that I teach called the Attentionist Self Coaching. And so we go through identifying all the issues and where are we this, where are we that. And then we get to a place that I get them to actually write their eulogy. And it's usually very challenging for people to do that. And they come back and they have to read it and share it, have to. We suggest that they do that, read their eulogy. And the eulogy is in a sense that really brings out our deepest wishes of how I want to be remembered, which really determines how I would like to live. Okay. So that becomes extremely challenging. But the reason I asked them to do that, because I want the death of this perhaps not fully true self, so that, and the next stage after that is that we create a new version of ourselves. But we have to see this death in order to create a new one. So yes, that's very challenging. I also remember I was teaching on mindful aging, which was something I was teaching at UCLA, Mindful Awareness Research Center. And part of that, which was very difficult, especially when young students were sitting there just like, do you know, I'm 19. What are you talking about? Writing their eulogy. It's very fascinating what happens. Even the word, when I use it, is like, what do you mean? I mean, everybody knows what eulogy is, but they just, they just get stuck on that. Like, what do you mean? It's like eulogy. Like, imagine you're writing your own eulogy, except it's true. It's not like, because, if you want to be remembered as a good person, all you need to do is die. Like all these people that are complaining about me, they're going to just say how wonderful I was and I was the best, this and that. But I mean the truthful one. What would you like truly be said about you, which determines how I would like to live? And people just find it very challenging.
Well, I can see all sorts of emotions
Yeah.
and fears coming up. I mean, if I think about the Ben from 5 years ago, if you asked me to do that exercise, it'd be so hard for me
Mm.
because, again, going back to that shame and that guilt that I knew was ruling my life, and I knew
Wow.
I was not living my potential. Some part of me just knew that I was living in fear. Up until that point, it was very hard for me to imagine a life of not experiencing those emotions, because for most of my life that I could remember, at least, I was experiencing the fear, the guilt, and the shame.
Hmm.
So the idea of trying to imagine a eulogy would be like really, it'd be hard, not only hard, but it would be activating for me. If I was in your class at that time,
Hmm.
what would you tell me to help navigate me through that?
If you couldn't write it, you couldn't get
If I
yourself to
was,
write.
if I'm sharing this with you and I'm like, look, I just feel like I'm really having a hard time. I'm just thinking about how unlovable I feel and how small I've been living my life and
Mm-hmm.
how much I've been living in fear. And I just can't imagine. I don't even know what that
Hmm.
looks like. What are you going to
Okay.
tell me?
I'm going to tell you, first of all, I would love to invite everybody that is listening to please ask yourself one question. What is my current relationship with death? And secondly, can you get yourself to write your own eulogy? I would really love to hear from you and see how that goes. But to answer your question, there's two ways we can do that. One is to consider somebody who really loves you. It could be an imaginary person, because when I say that, people say, but no, I don't think anybody loves me that way. So, okay,
There
let's
was a time
imagine.
at this time I'm telling you about, I literally felt like no one truly
Mm,
loved me. Let me tell you
I
why.
know. Huh.
Because I felt like no one truly knew me
Know you.
because
Yes.
I hid my true self from the world.
Yes. If they only knew, they wouldn't
Yeah.
love me anyways. Yeah.
Yeah.
So either imaginary person that loves you, or if that's easy, because sometimes that's easy for people. And I think like, yeah, like my best friend or my partner or my child or my mother loves me, and then write it from their perspective. Or if that doesn't work, and sometimes that doesn't work, I get you to write about a person that you actually love yourself or admire yourself. It could be person that you know or a person that you know of. Like people usually have a favorite person in history. Like imagine, I don't know, for me, it's like Rumi. Like, what would I write about Rumi 800 years later?
That's
And
a cool one. I love that
yeah, yeah,
because it's all where everyone's a reflection of us. So if we have someone that we
exactly.
admire, that we really admire and that we love, we can
Yes,
imagine that person. We're
yes,
externalizing it and imagine writing the eulogy for them. And
yes.
if it's everything's a mirror, then that eulogy is ours as well. Yeah.
Everything
Okay.
is a mirror. And what just happened was I got you to come out of your fear land and
Yeah.
judgmental place about yourself. And I invited you to go to a person that you admire. And you are right. Both the person I judge in a negative way and the person that I admire, they are both reflection of me. The person that I admire, either I have a lot of things in common with them, and I also, that's the way I would like to be. And that's the whole purpose of this writing the eulogy. Who do you want to be? Who do you admire? So write the eulogy for the person that you admire. And then you can tell it becomes so easy. I actually did that for Rumi. And I realized that how much I would love, I wish I could be really, uh, be in the service of humanity, because just imagine the words that this being had written 800 years later in so many languages is still valid and touches people, and people like get something out of that. So that determined that. So yeah, you get out of yourself basically. Either
Yeah.
imagining person that loves you or person that you love and admire, and then that immediately takes you out of that Fearland. The idea is not so much to make it about yourself, because we are all one anyways. I mean, this idea of self is very interesting, but get out of that place that you get stuck, and then you write your eulogy. And that eulogy is extremely telling. So if somebody read, and people read it out loud in the class, unless they really don't want to. I mean, I don't push them, but most people do eventually. They may not volunteer to be the first person, but they do. That is the most telling document one can write. It is so telling, because first is like the fluff that comes. Oh, I was the best mother, and oh, people loved me. Like it's just generic stuff that we all say. Okay. I was
Mm-hmm.
helpful and I was kind and I was generous. Okay. Okay. Great. Then, okay. Then what? Get specific. I really get them to be specific, because the more specific you are, the closer you are to understanding the person you desire to be, that you have covered up with all those things. And I don't know, we all have our own things, either teachings from our, places of worship, or parents, or school, or society, whatever, the borrowed stuff, the covered up stuff, that when I just let it go, I realize, you know what? I'm pretty good, because the essence of us, and that goes to many isms of the world, the essence of us is good. We all are seeking to be good. And hence, there's no need for that reaction and that worry that you have about dying with guilt and shame. But when we add all the judgments of the world, and the this and the I should, and I start shoulding myself, I should do this and should that and couldn't do, then that gets heavy, and then I get really far.
Can you give me some examples of what a quote unquote good eulogy or a more complete eulogy would say in this exercise? We
Mhm.
know that using generic terms like she was an amazing mother, she
Mhm.
was a good human being, she was kind, that's a little too generic. Give us examples of what specificity sounds like in
Mhm.
this process.
Mhm. I can one particular person comes to my awareness, the person that, um, was, heavily supported in her life and, never fulfilled, her true self because of the support that she received in her life. And by support, I mean emotionally, financially, all of that. It's very interesting that we think that person should be the person that is most liberated, and that person was the most entangled out of all the people that I heard read their eulogy.
Hmm.
And the entanglement was what came in the eulogy was that she was a very great artist and she did this and she did that. And this person never ever did that. And I stopped them. In fact, I don't think they ever did any any creation, any creativity, any paid work. They just basically never had to work. After they read their eulogy, I said, "That's interesting. Do you hear a yearning?" And she said, "No, I don't understand." I said, "What was one thing? Just one. Pick one thing that you said in that you haven't fulfilled." And she had to read it. That's how really unclear we are about our own desires. Once she went through the fluff, and I said, "Take your time." And she said, "Creativity and artistic ability." I said, "Yeah. And what would you do?" And she said, "I don't know." And this person was quite artistic. I could tell by just her handwriting. I could tell by the way she would assemble things together that were fascinating. And and after that class, I get shivers. She started actually creating art, and she's pretty well
Mhm.
known right now, so I don't want to disclose
Mhm.
any more information. And it was very fascinating to just watch that person come to life out of writing a eulogy that she found so challenging. She objected. She said, "I can never write it. Other people can do it. I can't do it. No, it's because when I was a child, my grandmother," like all these things that we have, stories. I said, "Great story. Write your eulogy."
Yeah, so I'm thinking about myself. If I'm writing my eulogy, I think about some of the things that I'm passionate about that I haven't fully done. So one of them is music, right? Creating music. And so in my eulogy, I would include that I've created music that has um, it impacted the lives of at least the people that I know, right? If not more.
Yes.
I'm humbling myself right now. um, and you know, but music, I know that a part of me just feels inspired by creating a film at some point in my life, so I would include
Mm,
that in my eulogy, right? So
yes.
some of these dreams that I have about myself, or these, yeah, these fantasies, right, actually including them in the eulogy, I can see how that process can actually help materialize
Yes.
those fantasies into reality.
Yes. That's how I started writing my book because everybody was telling me, "Write a book, write a book about your life." And that never appealed to me. I just wasn't motivated. It's just like, no, like, it was wonderful, but I don't need to write about it. But then I realized writing in a general sense, it wasn't writing about me, but it was writing, that really was something I was yearning. And then that's how actually my book many years ago, about a decade ago, came out of writing my eulogy, that I realized I have a yearning for writing. And then I started writing a book. And there are a lot of other things that came out of that. I created the mindfulness coaching, um, practice that I have. But I mean, I know it sounds very common right now, but 41 years ago, coaching, first of all, I mean, people thought I was gymnastic coach if I said I was a coach. Secondly, like mindfulness, I said, "No, no, 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 I'm sorry. What like both mindfulness and coaching were like foreign words." But created that because I wrote my eulogy and I realized, oh, I want a guide. Okay. Okay. That's called a coach. So I came up with that word. And then I thought, but I don't want it to just be about how to do this and that. I want something. I didn't know what it was. Called it form and substance, called it inner and outer coaching. Like, but it was the same essence. I wanted to say this kind of coaching, like deep coaching, not how do I want to say hello to you and have a really good meeting, but like, why am I not having a good meeting? What is stopping me? Let's go to a deeper aspect of it, energetic aspect. That's how I was born. It was born out of writing a eulogy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, to you, the listeners, I realize that not everybody listening might fully be resonating with an exercise like this. And I want to encourage you that if you're feeling like really charged by this conversation, or you finding it difficult for you to even think about doing this process, don't force yourself to do it. Be gentle with yourself and give yourself permission to work through whatever those resistances are, however much time that takes. Maybe just at this phase in your life is not the time to be doing this exercise. So just be aware, be really aware of where you stand uh, in this and how charged you feel about this conversation, and
Yes.
and and listen to that. Yeah,
Yes.
I
And,
just yeah,
and
and you do the
no,
and.
and and no, the more reactive you are to something like this, the more you need to do it. When you're right. I mean, exactly what Ben is saying. When you got to determine when it feels far safer or better, but just know anything that you are so reactive to, uh, is far more of a necessity than anything else. You really need to look at that. But when you decide when, because you need to be gentle and considerate and compassion. So yeah, that's a
Yeah, so maybe what you can do, because we're all about confronting with gentleness our fears, because that's how we grow, right? We don't want to avoid them. So maybe the process for you, if you are really charged by this conversation, is to just open up some inquiry. Be curious about it. What is it about this conversation that's making me feel very charged? Am I experiencing some shame and guilt? And if I am, what can I do about that? Right? And maybe you can go back to one of our previous episodes where we covered the topic of shame and the journey of working through shame, the journey that I went through of working through shame. So you start somewhere rather than avoiding it completely. You use it as an opportunity to go into inquiry and get
yeah.
curious about what you're experiencing. Yeah.
And it could be so many other reasons. It's not just shame and guilt. There's also many other reasons. It could be your fundamental relationship with the source. It could be that I called it a sulking relationship. When people have more of a transactional relationship with the source and something they wanted didn't happen or they didn't get it, they sort of like have this aversion to the whole subject, anything to do, anything that they believe involves the source. So it could be so many things. It could be energetic, it could be spiritual, it could be psychological, it could be medical, it could be physical. So there are many aspects to this particular relationship. And the only thing, as Ben, you said, is to just get curious about it. I wonder, don't worry, because we all worry about death. Wonder, it's a different W. Just wonder, first question, what is my relationship with death? Where do I stand there? And by death, I don't necessarily mean the physical death. I remember once I wrote a eulogy of a relationship that I was
Mm.
feeling it needs to end. And it
That's
was just
interesting.
so beautiful and it became so poetic. And every time I read this poem that I read, that I wrote about my relationship with a particular person, it clarified for me why I had decided to leave it. And it was just beautiful eulogy that came in a poetic form. But it could be just a paragraph about it. I wrote down that this is the eulogy of this relationship.
Yeah. Well, this was a rich conversation, Mitra. I'm grateful
Yes,
that we can have it. We'll probably revisit this topic again at some
definitely.
point in the future. But I think that's pretty good starting point for those listening and for us too. And is there anything else you would like to close with?
Indeed, it was a great conversation, and I also want to say that most of the time, our relationship with death informs the way we live.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Until next time, we wish everyone a beautiful rest of your week.
And this is the death of this episode.
Farewell. Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.